So in this moment, just allow yourself to notice what you're noticing. And then is it possible to notice that just the noticing of how you're noticing brings you out of the mind into the moment? And so now that attention is here, and just notice that your attention is actually here. And it's not in the content of thought. And just start noticing everything that you can see, not giving any one particular object more emphasis than another. But just allowing them to be seen equally and simultaneously. And then allow the eyes to come to rest on a single object. And then notice, if you will, that object is a shape and a color. And that on either side, and probably below and above, there are other objects. But when you look at them without objectifying them, almost as if an infant would look at them, just notice they're just shapes and colors. Before a baby has the capacity to think before words, the baby just sees shapes and colors and sees one shape and color, goes into the next shape and color. And keep expanding the way you're paying attention until you can see the whole moment. So your attention is actually resting on the periphery of the moment. And you see all the shapes and colors that make up the whole visual field. And just rest there. Letting your attention see everything equally and simultaneously. And notice that even the body or parts of it are in just shapes and colors like everything else. And is it possible to notice that the way a baby sees, the moment is one picture. It's seamless. You can't divide it into objects. It just sees the whole thing as if you're watching a movie and the picture fills up the whole screen. And what is it like to look in this panoramic way? And then, is it possible now to notice the function or the activity of seeing itself? We normally put our attention on what is seen, but seldom on the seeing. Is it possible that you can turn attention without words or anything, just to see if that you can find where seeing is coming from? And if I was a baby and didn't know I have eyes, and didn't know that eyes were the things that see, what would my experience be? And notice what turning attention towards the act of seeing what effect that has. And has seeing, in your experience, ever been absent? Even when we close our eyes, just allow the eyes to close. And now you're seeing darkness, but seeing is still happening. And if the mind produced, say, the shape of an apple, you would see that seeing is still possible. You're seeing the shape of the apple. And so seeing isn't dependent on eyes. It happens before the eyes. So just allow the eyes to open again. And notice both seeing and seen. But keeping attention wide, watching panoramically. Is it possible now to include the sounds that you hear? And we're going to listen to the sounds as an infant would listen to the sounds. They would just be sounds. These words wouldn't have meaning. Even the voices of thinking, they would just occur as sound. So let your thoughts, the ones that are speaking, just be sounds. Let my voice let go of the content and just let it be sound. And so there's the sound of this voice and the sound of the voices that may be talking and thinking, but there's other sounds. So is it possible just to relax attention into the environment and hear what other sounds are here? We're normally so narrowly focused that we're just paying attention to the sound of our thinking. But what is it like to listen to every sound equally and simultaneously? Just like you're viewing all the colors and shapes, this whole moment as one painting, so to speak. Just listening as one soundscape, almost like a little symphony, with each sound being an instrument in the symphony of now. And is it possible to notice in the hearing of them? Let's bring our attention to hearing. And in my experience, when I bring attention to the hearing, what's noticed is there's a silence, as if the hearing itself was silent and the sounds were appearing and disappearing back into them. Even the sound of this voice, when it pauses, when it stops in its place, is silence. And isn't it the same with every sound? When it stops, there's silence, as if the auditorium for the symphony was made of silence. And is there any difference between hearing and the silence? So resting attention on the whole moment, visually, resting it as far as you can imagine, holding every sound equally and simultaneously. Notice what that's like. Noticing seeing and hearing, seen and heard. And then is it possible to bring your attention to stillness. And notice how much of what you can see and hear is perfectly still. There may be little movements in the visual field, but notice they're happening in predominantly stillness. The sounds coming and going, moving through silent stillness. And then just allowing attention to include any sensation. Babies, before they identify with their bodies, before they're taught this body is me, they just experience sensation. They don't experience it within the confines of a body. So just allow those energies to be in the silence, to be in the whole space, and see what happens. And is it possible just to notice the capacity to feel them, no matter how small, how intense, how pleasant or unpleasant the sensations are? The capacity to feel them. Contains all of them. So perhaps the capacity to feel extends as far as the capacity to hear and see. That this silent, still capacity extends to hold all experience. Just check. In your experience, is there anything else that's actually here? Besides what you can see, what you can hear, and what you can feel. Perhaps taste and smell. And what happens when you bring the seeing, hearing, feeling, tasting, smelling, touching, the capacity to experience to the fore of your attention? What is it like to rest and view the moment as an infant? Innocent, without words, which means without judgments. No right or wrong, good or bad. No time. What is it like to rest without labels, without words, without stories?